Welcome to Books and Brews Light. We are on number 64 with Alison Gieschen. Did I say that right?
You absolutely did.
All right. I'm assuming it's a German name.
It is, yes.
Okay. No wonder I got it right. I've been studying German, if you can believe it, since I was about 5 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we lived in Germany on an American air base. And so actually since I was 4, and so we had a local woman come in and teach us German from the time I was in preschool or kindergarten. So
Wow, that's
yeah,
awesome.
can't say I'm fluid, but or fluent. I'm not fluent, but at least I can recognize phonetics. So yeah, anyway, welcome, and tell my vast audience of millions where you are checking in from.
I am checking in from the island of Hiva-Oa, which is one of the, I think it's 5 inhabited islands in French Polynesia, the Marquesas. There are a few more tiny islands, but actually only 5 of them have civilization on them.
Okay, wow. And what you're doing there has to do with your reading today. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your book.
So 8 years ago, my husband and I decided it was time to fulfill our lifelong dream, which was to sail around the world. And when our last son got married, we said, okay, we can make our 5-year plan and we can actually do this. So we followed our 5-year plan, sold everything we owned, our home. We had a horse farm, quit our jobs, found our sailboat, and cast off the dock lines. So since then, we have been to 49 countries, 4 continents, and we're now about halfway around, having made it to French Polynesia. And during this time, I've been an avid travel blogger because I love photography and I love telling stories, and we have so many stories to tell. I mean, every day I could tell a story. It's amazing. And it has absolutely fueled my book writing, because even though I might be writing my fiction memoirs, I write fiction, but all my fiction have pieces of our life and our stories and what we've seen and experienced in them.
Right. I found it really interesting reading your About You section and some of your backstory. You worked as a vaulting coach.
Yes, I did.
And I find that interesting because that's actually what my daughter does now. And so she is about, how old is she? She's in her 30s, and she recently had a baby. And I got the impression she was continuing to do vaulting. She was doing it herself, but she also helps kids, handicapped kids, work on horses and do vaulting. So that was
very cool.
Right. And did you get to put on the spandex outfits and all the flashy fun stuff?
I was never, I had just a regular equestrian riding program, and my sister saw vaulting when she was off at a clinic in California, because it was huge out in California way back, many years ago. And she came back and she says, you have to see this sport. It's doing gymnastics on horses. I'm like, Carol, I have 3 kids under 3. I have an equestrian program. I teach. I don't need to see this sport. Well, she didn't take no for an answer, and she brought a horse all the way to my farm, 11 hours away from North Carolina. And when my riding students saw they could stand on the back of a horse and not get yelled at, they're like, we have to do this. And my daughter was 3 at the time. And the first time she saw people standing on a horse, she never wanted to sit on the back again and hold reins in her hand. So I spent the next 25 years developing a program, competing all over the nation. We did international, and she won 8th in the 2018 World Equestrian Games in Pas de Deux.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah, my daughter unfortunately didn't have quite that much opportunity, but I don't even remember how I stumbled across it, but she just loved horses like every, 8, 9-year-old girl does. And we found this vaulting program. It was out in Bremerton, Washington. And so at the time, she was the oldest of, I was pregnant with twins during that time, which would have been my 7th and 8th. So we didn't necessarily have a lot of money to spend on riding lessons. So I said, well, can I bring her every other week? And he said, it's important to be here every week. We're giving you a scholarship. So, pay for every other week. Yeah, and so she did vaulting on and off for the rest of the time we lived in Washington, but I don't think it was that big a program. I don't think it was getting into competitions and things like that. But it's always neat when I stumble across somebody who has that background in vaulting because it's a small world.
It is. And if anybody ever wants to learn about the sport, I have a child's book called Julia's Vaulting Dream.
Mhm.
And it's the story of a little girl who experiences vaulting and rises all the way up through her gold medal. And so it's just explaining vaulting through a child's eyes, and it's on my website.
Right. Now, before we get into the book that you're actually here to talk about, you write in quite a variety of genres. You have memoir, you have children's fiction, you have fiction. Tell us about some of the things that you've written and have available.
So I do have my Julia's Vaulting Dream, which I wrote early on, but I just felt a real need to educate kids about vaulting. And actually, the American Vaulting Association did, buy a bunch of the books and distribute them to help promote the sport.
Mhm.
And I have a nonfiction book I wrote my very first one called Blue Ridge, and that was nonfiction. And it was just a story inspired from my mother, who couldn't find any good books to read that didn't have a lot of sex and had really good stories, and she wanted dogs and people who couldn't have babies in them. So
Oh,
I wrote it.
so you wrote it for her. And that one jumped out at me too because of the two places in this country. As I said, I grew up in the Air Force, so I've seen a lot of this country. Lake Superior and the Blue Ridge Mountains are the two that really just said, this is home, this is where I want to be. And so we had to leave Minnesota. We lived close to Lake Superior and taxes got out of control, so we left. But now I'm in the Appalachians, which is fairly close to the Blue Ridge Mountains. I mean,
Yes.
it's part of the same. So I've gotten to live the two places I love. But I thought you said that's nonfiction, isn't?
That is nonfiction. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yes,
it
that's
is.
nonfiction. Mhm.
Okay. I'm
And
confusing it with another one about the girl who's abused and then marries a rich man.
that's not one of mine, I don't think.
Well, I wonder what I stumbled onto.
Yeah, though I don't have. Well, she was no, yeah, she was abused, and she did marry a rich man. So that is, I guess, in a backhand way, that is her story.
Okay.
So that is
Okay.
Blue Ridge. Yeah,
Okay. So I thought that that was fiction.
that is fiction. No,
Oh,
that's
it
not.
is.
It is fiction. Yes, it is fiction.
Okay. Okay. Then, but you have some nonfiction out and then your memoir.
I do. So I have. Well, that's the same thing. I have Riding the Waves of Reality 1 and 2, and 3 coming out probably in the next year. So
Mhm.
that takes you through the first 8 years of our sailing, the first 4 years, and then the next 3 years.
Okay.
And then
Now, you call it blue water sailing. Does that just mean sailing the ocean as opposed
there,
to lakes?
yes, blue water is
Mhm.
specifically ocean sailing, and it's specifically not shore sailing, it's crossing oceans.
Okay. Okay. I thought so, but I had never really heard that term before. So give a little background on how you got into sailing around the world.
Well, it's pretty easy actually. I didn't start competitive sailing until college, and right about the time I got really into it, my parents retired and moved to the coast of North Carolina, New Bern, North Carolina, which has a huge sailing community. And my mom decided she wanted to be the fastest woman skipper. And she got out there and started competing, and there were no other women skippers. So then she just had to be the fastest skipper, period.
Uh-huh.
So she sailed for a couple years, won every regatta she went in. And finally, there's this really big Michelob Cup regatta. And I was going to come for the weekend from college at UNCC to come to the coast to sail in this race. Meanwhile, my cousin worked up at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, and he had an eligible bachelor next to him who was also a marine engineer and a 3-time national dinghy champion. And he said, "Hey, buddy, you want to come down and be a ringer on my Aunt Jerry's boat in North Carolina?" And Dan's like, "Sure, yeah, I'd love to." Well, he came down. We met. We went sailboat racing, scuba diving, windsurfing, canoeing, every activity you can imagine. At the end of the 3-day weekend, he was getting ready to go 11 hours north to Philly. I was going back to Charlotte, and we're at a pub and we're drinking our beer and, saying goodbye. And he said, someday I want to sail around the world. I said, mine too. Let's get married. So the fourth day we were together after that, he asked me to marry him. And I said, yes.
Oh, and you're 30 years into it?
We are 39 years into being married. And when we first got married, we moved up to where he lived because he had the job and I had just graduated college.
Mhm.
And we had built a horse farm because I came with horses and had our kids right away. So we didn't want to cast off. Some people do take their kids sailing, but we didn't have the money to do that. We had to still
Mhm.
work. So when our very last son got married, he said, it's time. And we just implemented our plan and we did it.
I was really curious, the selling everything. That's huge. Are there, what things were the hardest to let go of?
Well, I was ready to make the change of not owning animals because all my life I have been tied down by animals and I love them dearly, love everything, every experience I had, but not being tied to them was appealing to me at this point in our lives. So that wasn't so hard, but we did this big sale where we put everything we owned out in the front yard, had a big estate sale, sold everything. We had down to a car. And we brought the car down to where our boat was in Delaware, and we were fixing it up to cast off the dock lines. And that was the last thing to go. And when I saw that car drive away, and I'm just kind of looking at the boat, and I'm looking at Dan, and I'm going, this is real. We no longer have any ties left to this country. We are free, but it was disconcerting because immediately after that, we realized we needed something at Home Depot, which was 8 miles away. And we had to get on our bikes and ride 8 miles, 16 miles round trip to go get a part. And that was a really good introduction to what our life is going to be like, because basically it's going from place to place looking for something that we need that's a really long way away.
Mm-hmm. It just, one of the things, my husband and I have a lot of interests. And so when we were selling our house in the Twin Cities, we talked to one realtor who just kept saying, you have a lot of stuff. You have a lot of stuff. And by about the 10th time, we're like, yes, we know we have a lot of stuff. So I was thinking, my gosh, like right to my left here, which is why I'm looking there, we have one of our grand pianos. In another room, we have the other grand piano because we each brought a grand piano to this marriage. And we have one tuned to Baroque and we have one tuned to modern tuning. We've got harps, we've got saxophones, trombones, we've got decks of keyboards and guitars. We have a massive library. And I read that you sold everything. And I thought, how in the world would I do that? We use these. And I live on a farm right now. So I hear you about being tied down to the animals. We're going to go away for 5 days for my husband's birthday. And the only reason we can do that is because we do have a very, very reliable farmhand. But it's always a little uncomfortable walking away from those animals. We'll only be an hour and a half away, but it's disconcerting. What if something happens that he really needs two people? So I can understand that sense of freedom you must have had. Like, I can now go anywhere.
Now I do have to say that I asked to bring one chicken on board, so I'd have an egg a day, and I raised dwarf Nigerian goats, and I made my own yogurt and cheese and stuff.
Oh. And
I wanted one dwarf Nigerian goat, and he's like, no goats and no chickens. So I was a little disappointed, but
Right. I can't imagine a chicken on a boat. I mean, that's a small space.
People have done that. There's a very famous Frenchman who sailed around the world with his chicken Monique, and it was a beautiful relationship, and she laid him an egg a day.
Uh-huh.
It worked out great for him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've got about 19, 20 chickens down there, and right now we're only getting 1 egg a day from all of them. So it's kind of a sore point with me right now.
Yeah.
half of them are young, so I'm not going to blame them. So I was reading some of your blog pieces, and my husband used to own boats. He had a fishing boat that was kind of ocean worthy, had some, nice things, nice boats, but he always said, boat means break out another 1,000.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've had a few of those experiences in trying to cross the Pacific.
Well, every ocean we've had that experience. I mean, it's not if, it's just when the next thing breaks.
Mhm.
And for instance, right now we are dead on the water. We have no engine because
Mm.
our engine was made in the 80s and we can't get a replacement part. So we had to pull a piece out, send it off to Tahiti and pray that it gets repaired and then our engine will work again. So we're
So are you just, I hate to use the word stuck in French Polynesia because it's beautiful, but are you there indefinitely
we're
until you get
definitely
this part?
we're stuck until our engine is fixed. Yes, we have a lot of friends here in the harbor who have been very helpful, and we can actually jump on a plane and fly to Tahiti if we need to maybe get
Okay,
So we're not like stranded here by any stretch, and it's
okay.
not uncommon for us to spend. We have spent 3 months or more in 5 different countries waiting for boat parts.
But it's not a Gilligan's Island sort of situation.
No.
That's good. I think I take life pretty easily. I think I roll with punches very well, but I think I would find that a little disconcerting to know I'm sort of at the mercy of this part coming in or not. So do you have your reading ready?
I do. So my mermaid book just came out not too long ago, and it just won the Golden Wizard Award. So
Oh,
on my boat,
congratulations.
thank you. I don't have the luxury of ordering copies, but when I do get my next copy, I'll have a little Golden Wizard seal. So I
Nice.
decided not to read that today, that it might be more interesting for adults to hear about riding the waves of reality too. And since this one just came out not too long ago, I thought I would read a little bit from that.
Go ahead.
All right, let me get a sip of water. I could pretend this is beer, but
Well, I have water. I almost had an Irish whiskey. It's very cold here. I was going to ask, how did you survive this big storm? And then I saw, wait, she's
yeah,
not in this country.
nope.
It's a really chilly day here. I had to break chores up into about 3 or 4 sections because my fingers kept going
Oh,
numb.
wow.
So I had the Irish whiskey earlier to warm up. Now I just have water.
Which we developed an affinity for as we spent 2 years in Ireland because we were trapped there because of COVID. So
Oh,
we're also huge
well,
Irish whiskey fans.
that's not a bad place to be trapped. My first husband is actually from there, so my kids pretty routinely go to visit their relatives there. So it is a
That's
beautiful
awesome.
place. Yeah.
Very beautiful. So this chapter is about it's the beginning of the story, and it takes place with our first major breakage. So it's called Natal em Lagos, which is Portuguese for Christmas in Lagos. So chapter 1, imagination allows you to think of the journey worth making. Motivation gets you started, but it's patience and perseverance that gets you there. And that's by Ernie J. Zelinsky. I always start off every chapter with a quote.
Okay.
The sea has a way of humbling even the most hopeful sailor. When we made the decision to sell our home and sail around the world, we knew there would be trade-offs. We'd be giving up many comforts. The easy luxuries of land life, like haircuts, a quick grocery run, family birthdays, and the simple joy of throwing a party on our farm. We traded all that for something uncertain and vast, a life dictated by the wind, the weather, and the sea. 4 years, a global pandemic, and 14,000 nautical miles later, you'd think we'd have found our rhythm, a new normal out there. But life aboard Equus never really settles into predictable patterns. Thinking the worst luck was behind us, we headed off towards new and exciting destinations, ready to take on the challenges of new sailing grounds. Instead of smooth sailing, we found new obstacles to be surmounted. Just as we could never predict when we set sail that we would be stuck for 2 years in Ireland as the world shut down, the next halt in our journey caused us to shake our heads with disbelief at our amazing ability to be shadowed by bad luck. When we set off towards Madeira, our hopes were high. We'd planned a smooth run, Madeira, then the Canary Islands, and finally the Dominican Republic to meet our family for a mid-January reunion. The kids had gifted us at a stay at an all-inclusive resort for Christmas. The perfect reward after months at sea. For once, we thought everything was lining up beautifully. Of course, that should have been our first warning. A day into the passage, the weather turned ugly. The wind rose higher than predicted. The seas grew unruly, and before long, the in-mast roller furler, the heart of our mainsail system, failed. The sail exploded from the mast like an untamed animal. Dan clipped in with his harness, fought his way forward through the spray to lash it down. It was dangerous, exhausting work, but he managed. With our mainsail out of commission, there was no safe way to continue to Madeira. We changed course, running on the jib alone towards the mainland of Portugal. By the time we reached the port of Lagos, we were tired, grateful to be safe, and clinging to the hope that repair would only take a few weeks. We were wrong again. Lagos didn't just become a stop, it became a home for the next 6 months. Precious time flushing away like water from our bilge. When our mast was removed, Equus looked like a wounded, proud creature suddenly stripped of her strength. I couldn't help but feel for her, sitting low and awkward in the water while every other sailboat in the marina stretched its mast high and confident into the sky. She looked embarrassed, if a boat can feel such a thing. At first, we were optimistic. The boatyard got to work quickly, and friends from past ports welcomed us warmly. Our friends Marianne and Gary from Whatever She Wants, our boat buddies from Book 1, had spent their lockdown here and promised we'd love the sailing community. Before long, we were sharing dockside happy hours with familiar faces, swapping stories over drinks as the sun sank behind the harbor. But our quick repair timeline soon unraveled. COVID outbreaks repeatedly shut down the yard. If one worker got sick, the whole team had to quarantine for 10 days. Add the 2-week Christmas closure, and it seemed like time itself was on holiday. Days bled into weeks, and our hopes of making it to the Dominican Republic slipped away like the tide. Still, Lagos had its charm. The marina buzzed with energy, travelers, sailors, and dreamers, all on their own unpredictable paths. Then came the wanderers, young Europeans trekking the docks with backpacks and wide eyes, hoping to hitch a ride to the Canary Islands. It was a common sight in Lagos. Some had never set foot on a boat, yet they were determined to find one heading across the Atlantic. Even without a mast, Equus seemed to attract them. One afternoon, a polite young German man stopped to ask me about finding a boat south. An hour later, I met him again, or so I thought. The same accent, same green sweater, same question, but when I greeted him, he looked puzzled. "We've never met," he said. That's how I met Jonas and Moritz, 2 near doppelgangers, both searching for adventure and a boat to carry them there. Before long, they became part of our Lagos days, visiting often, filling our cockpit with music and laughter, their youthful optimism a gift, reminding us why we'd started this journey in the first place.
Very nice. No, but they weren't twins.
No, they weren't even related. They just had the same.
Oh,
I just
wow.
thought I was talking to the same person. And he's like, "I don't know you." I mean, they look
That's
so much
pretty
alike.
wild. That's wild. That's almost the most interesting part of it because that doesn't happen often. So, tell me a little bit about the process of buying a boat. It sounds like it took quite a while to find the perfect boat.
It's a very, very long process. It did take us, 4.5 of the 5 years to find our boat because we wanted a very specific boat, and there was only 50 of them ever made. And every time
Really?
we found one come up for sale, we would make an appointment to go look at it, buy plane tickets, and by the time we got there, it was sold. That happened 4 times.
Mm-hmm. What
So
was the specific boat and why were so few made?
it's called a Tazwell, is the brand of boat, and it was designed by quite a famous blue water sailboat designer. And he's made a couple different classes of boats. And they were built in the Toshing shipbuilding factory in Taiwan. And what shipbuilders do is they make like a certain size boat, and like they made 50 of these, and then they'll make like a larger boat, and they'll make a certain number of those, or a smaller boat. And when they get old and don't want to do it anymore, or for some reason the shipyard closes down, then production stops. So usually in every boat made, there are only so many. For instance, my friends, Marianne and Gary, who happen to be in this harbor, um, they have a boat that only 2 were ever made.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah, it just, if you get what you
What
get.
what was it about the Tazewell that you specifically wanted?
So, before we set off on this sailing adventure around the world, my husband had been a merchant marine and had been out across oceans and everything, but I had never been out on an ocean in a small boat before. And I decided to take a heavy weather training passage course with a man named John Crutchmer, who is used to be a delivery boat captain. Now takes groups of people sailing around the world, and one of the most experienced people on the planet. And so during this 2-week heavy weather training passage that my husband actually got to come at the last minute and be on the boat also, he would grill us and say, "What do you want in this? What do you want to see in your boat? What features do you want to have?" I'm like, "Well, I want an aft cockpit because I want a full size queen bed in the back. If I'm going to be on a boat for 10 years, I want a really comfortable bed." So that narrowed it down. I want a very sturdy boat, one that I can absolutely trust no matter what latitude we're at, whether it's icy or tropical. I want a very thick, sturdy boat. I want one that can, it's heavy enough to take the waves and not be real. So I'm giving him all these things, and my husband's telling him what he wants. And he made a list of the top 5 boats that he thinks we should buy. And this was number 1 on the list. So we hunted
Okay.
until we found this boat.
Okay. That's funny. It sounds to me like when I bought my Kia Sedona, I had just gotten divorced. The kids were old enough that I could downsize from the 15-passenger van, but they were still growing. I had 7 boys and my 2 girls, and I knew I needed the 3rd row and it needed to be
Wow.
spacious. So I did all my research, found out Kia Sedona is the only economical car that fits my needs. I wanted red, so I went down to the dealership. I said, "You have a red Kia Sedona. I want it." He's like, "No, you have to take a test drive." I said, "It doesn't matter what happens on the test drive. It's the only thing that fits my needs." He made me take a test drive. I'm like, "Thank you. Can I buy it now?" I thought, easiest sale this guy ever made in his life. So it sounds like a little bit of the same thing, except not quite so easy to find the specific boat.
Well, when you know, you know.
Right, right. Well, when you go about it methodically like that, know exactly what you want to need. Same reason we bought our RV was for the bed, really, because, we're getting older. We need a bed that's comfortable. Now that the dog is gone, we sold the RV, but it was really good while we had it for her and for us. So I'm sure a lot of people have this same dream of living on a sailboat or well, it is a sailboat.
It is a
Correct.
sailboat, yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
right. But I'm thinking one of the things that's really going to hold them up. So just to tell you, I'm not asking this to be nosy, but how do people who live on sailboats, how do you support yourselves? Do a lot of people work remotely, or did selling everything cover years of expenses?
Selling everything did cover years of expenses. There's a
Mhm.
lot more than we anticipated. And my husband just started getting a pension, and I started getting a pension. So those have been a huge
Okay,
lifeline for us. And then I do make a little bit of money on my books, so that's helpful.
right, right.
But
Um,
a lot of people still work online. Many, many, many,
okay,
especially with the advent of Starlink, which just came out in the past 3
yeah,
years, I want to say. And now anybody,
okay.
I mean, I can take a call in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. My mom is 95, and she'll call me and she goes, "Where are you?" I'm like, "Mom, I'm in the middle of the Atlantic." And she's like, I found you." I'm like, "Yes, you did."
That's wonderful. And so this is a wonderfully creative way to live for your writing. How do you structure that time between the needs of dealing with the boat or dealing with sailing if you're out? And do you have structured time to write every day, or how does that work?
It can't really have a structure at this point. Well, since we're in a harbor, it can, but
Mhm.
Sometimes we're moving daily from harbor to harbor, and I won't be able to write for a couple of days because it's really hard to write if we're sailing because the boat's just too much movement.
Okay.
So it depends on our location, and being stuck here has been good in that I've been able to get 2 books published in the past
Right.
several months, and my husband does all my editing and my cover designs and putting it together to publish. So he does a lot of that work.
Can you hold up the mermaid book again?
Yes, I
Because
can.
that's a really beautiful cover.
So that's a
So,
funny story. Funny story about this is I wrote my mermaid book and I wanted to have beautiful illustrations. And I decided I've gotta hire a professional illustrator. So I was looking around and I was getting bids from people to be an illustrator and looking at their artwork, and nothing was really floating my boats, so to speak. And then we met an American couple in Africa, in Tangiers, Africa. And it was the only other American boat in the harbor, and they were right across from us, and we hit it off, and we had some expeditions together and everything. So I'm on Facebook, and I see Barbara, was the woman's name, and she had this beautiful illustration, and she goes, "I just illustrated a children's book, and this is one of my illustrations." And I went, "Oh my gosh!" And I said, "Barbara," I sent a message. I said, "Barbara, I have this illustration. I have this manuscript complete about a mermaid. Would you be interested in illustrating it?" And she
mhm.
goes, "Well, send me the manuscript, and I'll let you know." So I send it to her, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, I love this. I would absolutely love to illustrate it." It wasn't Barbara,
Mhm.
my friend. It was somebody with a similar last name, and she was a 7-time international award-winning artist from England. And why she was on my Facebook group, I don't know, because we don't know have anybody in common, and I don't know why she would be in my feed at all, except maybe that I was looking for illustrators. I don't know. Maybe somehow the computer knew that. And she only takes like 3 manuscripts a year. And she loved
Mhm.
the story so much that she took my manuscript and illustrated my book.
That's an amazing story. So that's some great luck. You've had some bad luck with the boat, but great luck with. And do I understand correct that you thought you were talking to your new friend or your?
Yes. I mean,
That
we
is
were, together
wild.
for 1 week, and her name was Barbara, and it had started with the letter O, and it was a long name. And my illustrator is Barbara Orwix, and
Mhm.
it's a Polish name. Um, Ozarek, Owczarek. And
Okay.
the two were kind of similar in the number of letters, and they both started with O, and I couldn't discern the difference not having both those names in front of me. So I
Right.
just thought I was talking to my friend, and I really wasn't.
That is a wild story. One of the things I was very curious about, and this comes partly from my own experience, that my husband and I were going to go to Africa. And we were going to go to a Krista Berg concert in South Africa. And we weren't able to because of the political situation in, I believe it was Kenya. We would have had to fly home via an airport in Kenya to make a transfer.
Hmm.
Because of his job, he was not allowed to be in Kenya, not even in the airport. So
Okay.
do you end up having to really keep a close eye on politics and places that might not be a great place to go at the time?
Yes, we have. For instance, there were some places in South America that we were forbidden by our boat insurance to go because of the risk of
Mm,
tax on,
okay.
piracy. Um, Other than that, there's not really a lot of danger in this day and age. It used to be a lot of turmoil in the Red Sea, and piracy and attacks even on sailboats. And now that's a much less common thing. Like in this day and age, we wouldn't go to the Red Sea because there's so much going on there, and you know, a lot of political conflict. But in general, the rest of the world is pretty easygoing. And the path that cruisers take to get around the world
Mhm.
are from one common port to the next common port. You just kind of travel the same route to circumnavigate. And all of these places accept us and are very friendly and very welcoming, no matter the nationality.
Okay. Well, I imagine I've talked to one other person who lives on a boat, and I don't remember if it's a sailboat or another kind. I believe her name was Kimberly Ward, and she has a book too about her experiences sailing. I got the impression that it really is a very small community, and you get to know these people as you travel around the world and keep bumping into them.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yep, I have a
Um,
saying, the world is a small place, but never so small as in the world of sailing. And like
uh-huh.
our best boat buddies, we were apart for, a year and a half after COVID, and then we re-met in the mid, and then we were apart for another 2 years. And here we are in the same harbor again,
Mhm. It
halfway around the
reminds
world.
me of kids who grow up in the Navy. Now, I was in the Air Force. I mean, my dad was, but in the Navy, that's a very small branch, and they keep bumping into each other all over the world because there
Mhm.
just aren't as many Navy bases. So,
Right.
as you've traveled now, you said you've been to 49 countries.
Yeah, I think it's 48.
Okay. And do you have a goal how many you're hoping to hit?
No, we just take everyone as we get to. We don't even know what our plans are
Mhm.
after. We'll be going from here to New Zealand to Australia, and then probably Australia up to Thailand. And then we don't know how many little countries we will hit, or what our exact
Mhm.
route will be. We'll go around the Cape of Africa, um, and then we don't know if we're going to go to South America and hit a bunch more countries on the eastern coast, or if we'll just go down Antarctica and around up to the other side of South
Mhm.
America. So we don't really have. You can't make plans because even if you make them, you're not going to keep them.
The motto of my life is what happens when you're making other plans. So I I get it. Of all the places you've been, what have been one or two of the most interesting?
We love the Azores. They're a group of islands off the coast of Portugal, out in the ocean. There's actually the first group that Christopher Columbus saw
That's
when he
great.
sailed off to go discover the
Mhm.
Americas. And they're incredible. Each of the islands there's about five of them, I think, that are inhabited, have their own kind of culture and feel. And they're very inexpensive, and they're between 60 and 70 degrees 12 months out of the year. They're covered in beautiful flowers. There's volcanic mountains, so there's hot springs, and the marine life is incredible. It used to be the whaling capital of the world, and they don't allow whaling there anymore, but they have all the museums and things, and they have whale spotters still up on the hills with their spy glasses. And every day they go up and they watch for the whale spouts, and they can tell what kind of whale is there by the way the water pattern comes out of the spout.
Mhm.
So then you have all your islands that have your whale watching boats, and they can
Mhm.
direct the people right to where the pods are.
Okay.
And it's just like a huge meal for two of us, including, a couple bottles of wine, appetizers, main courses, desserts. It's like $20.
Wow. I want to go there. We do
So
like dining out. So what has been the most surprising thing or most unexpected place you've run into that just wasn't what you expected?
probably Cape Verde. I expected it. Cape Verde is again one of those islands that's off the coast of Africa. And when we left the Canaries, we were going to cross the Atlantic straight to the Caribbean, but a lot of boats go down to Cape Verde because it's just like a week sail, and you can kind of restock and then head off across the Atlantic. And we had autopilot issues, so we ended up having to stop there. And you just, it sounds tropical, Cape Verde, at this beautiful green island. Well, it was anything but green, and it
Mhm.
it was let's just say that we ran into some really nefarious characters there because the drug trade is huge on that island. It's
Oh,
probably their number one income. And
mhm.
we got trapped there waiting for an autopilot for 3 months. And some people have gone on vacation there and go, yeah, it's pretty nice. I got some really cool islands. But if you're there for any period of time, it
Mhm.
becomes very soul sucking. And I kind of never imagined such a difficult 3 months as we had there.
So you wouldn't recommend it?
I wouldn't tell somebody not to go there. I mean, if it's on your bucket list and you want to see the islands that are there, they have a lot of history, mostly of slavery and things like that. But there's
Mhm.
only 6 last names on the island of Cape Verde. 70% of the people born there leave, and most of the women don't bother getting married. They have a baby and then they just hand it off to their aunt or their grandmother. So it's a very and the number of people that don't work and just beg off of the sailboats and people that go there for tourism is
Mhm.
huge.
Okay.
So as long as you know that and you want to explore it just because you want to go there, you're not going to be in any danger or anything. But beyond
Mhm.
that, I would not recommend it.
Okay. So the last thing I wanted to ask you about, you have a very interesting book. I think it's called The Seven. It's a very unique premise. Can you kind of tell me how that book came to be and tell my vast audience what it's about?
Well, unfortunately, just because I left my animals behind didn't mean they leave me behind. So every night I have to go out and feed them and take care of them. And it's really causes me distress. And the horses are out of hay. Where am I going to get the hay? The goats need milking. How come the goats aren't milked? Oh my gosh, the chickens are out of water and food. So
Mhm.
they're still very prominent. All my life I took care of animals and I can leave them, but I can't leave that feeling of taking care of them. So normally the horses in my dreams were the horses that I had on my farm. And we had between 10 and 12 all the time. We had a lot of horses and same characters show up in my dreams. Well, one night I had a dream and the horses were involved and I wasn't taking care of them. I realized they were looking into my soul and determining if I was a good person, if I appreciated life on this planet. And I woke up and it was a very poignant dream. And I told my husband about it. I'm like, this was such a cool dream. I said, I have to write a book about it. So I came up with I started with 9 and I'm like, no, 9 is too many. 7 characters from 7 different places on the globe. And the locations or the characters are somebody that I have a relationship to. So either I've been to that place and I know it, or I know a person that was from there. And it was a learning experience for me because I dove into the histories of their cultures and where they lived. So it's almost like a historical fiction. It goes back and talks about, where these people came from and what their lives were like and what their culture was like. And the premise of the story is that these 7 people, some of them are horse people, some of them are not, have an encounter with a horse. And that horse's job is to judge them whether they appreciate the gifts of the earth. And at the
Mhm.
end, they're all called together and the horses are passing judgment. And the people don't know at the time they're being judged. They just this encounter with a horse. And
Mhm.
if the majority appreciate the gifts of the earth, humanity will be saved. If they don't, humanity will take it off planet to start over again.
That's a very interesting premise. I really found that interesting. So where can people find you online?
So AlisonGieschen.com is my author website, and I have stories as one of my, you can click on stories, and I have a story behind the story for each character of the 7 that tells
Oh,
why I
nice.
picked it, how I know that
Okay.
person, and also I do a history of each of the breeds of horses. So, for instance, here on the French Polynesians, one of my characters actually lands in Fiji and has his encounter with a horse. So I had to research where those horses came from. And the first time I saw a horse on these islands, I went running up to him. I'm like, I know your ancestors. I know where you came from. And I was so excited to pet this horse that I had, just studied and embodied and loved the story of how they got there.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, the history of the horses and the story behind the story for all the 7 characters are on there. And all of my books are listed.
Okay, fantastic. And that's at AlisonGieschen.com. And then you also have, is it sailmates.org?
Correct. And that's my blog. So I tell my stories and I show my pictures.
I
And
I
on,
enjoyed that site. And you have a tracker where people can see where
yes,
your
you
boat
can see
is.
where our boat is. My
I
mom
thought
loves
that
that
was,
part.
yeah, I was really interested to see the boat itself and pictures of it. And you have the link to your YouTube so people can see
There's
your
videos.
travel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was enjoying some of those, so I hope people will go there. People can
And
find me. Oh, Facebook.
Facebook, Sailmates, just Sailmates on Facebook. And I do daily pictures and
Okay,
daily stories. And
okay.
Instagram, I have, usually my Instagram videos all make it to my Facebook page, but his
Mhm.
Instagram is Sailing Equus. And that I do daily. I put together fun little videos to music. And, for instance, we hiked to the top of the mountain here and watched the sunset as a group of
Mhm.
sailors. And I have all the pictures and toasting with the sunset in the background. And It's
Okay.
beautiful here.
I look forward to digging into some of that. People can find me at booksandbrews.net. Of course, our YouTube channel is at Symbol Books and Brews spelled out. My books are at lauravosica.com. Our sponsor is Gabriel's Horn Press, and they are at gabrielshornpress.com. So lots of great authors there. And you can see our farm animals. In fact, we just had a brand new lamb today, which
Oh, congratulations.
yeah, so far most of our ewes are giving us twins. And I went out today and there's this little tiny brand new one, and it looks like she had just one. So those are all at glenmurrellfarms.wordpress.com. And I'm not sure we have anyone scheduled. Our most recent interviews were with Prophets Petrus and Kajal Vermaak, who came to us from South Africa, and they were talking about the rapture and tribulation. And I'm just about to get my interview up with Christiane Scarpino, whose book is about surviving a terrorist attack. And that was, of course, very interesting conversation. And we have more coming up in the future. I believe our next guest is talking about her time in Africa. So we've been looking for African beers and cocktails that compete with. So that's what we have coming up. That's what we've just had. And thank you very much for being here. Cheers.